Come and have a seat in the Skald circle, and hear the tale of the Mead of Poetry as told by Casimir. Long ago the gods of the Aesir and the Vanir fought. However, they made peace, and they sealed this peace by all spitting into a great jar. And to make certain no one forgot this peace, they used the spittle to create a god. This god's name was Casimir, and he was one of the wisest of the gods. Everyone loved Casimir, for as he traveled he would give people advice. However, he would give the advice in such a way that made the person given the advice feel like they used their own mind to solve the problem. Gods, men, elves, and even giants welcomed Casimir into their homes to garner the wisdom from him. However, word of Casimir soon spread to the most unpleasant of sorts. Two dwarven brothers, Fjalar and Galar, for you see they were envious of Casimir, for in their greed they could not admire anything without wanting it for themselves. The two dwarves invited Casimir to their home to feast with them at a gathering of dwarves. Well, the only pleasant thing about the gathering was the tableware made of hammered gold. After the feast, the two dwarves asked to speak to Casimir in private. The god of wisdom, perhaps unwisely, followed. In the gloom-shadowed room, the dwarves drew knives they had hidden and plunged them into Casimir's chest. The dwarves caught all the blood and put it into two jars called Son and Bodn, and a great cauldron named Odrorir. The dwarves were pleased with their work. Not long after, the gods sent a messenger asking after Casimir, and they said that Casimir, having no equal to compete with, choked on his own knowledge. The gods believed them, and the dwarves were happy. From his blood, the dwarves made a marvelous mead. Not only was it delicious, but any who drank it would gain the wisdom of Casimir. The dwarves jealously guarded their secret. One day, the dwarves played host to two awful guests, the giant Gilling and his wife. Before long, the two giants quarreled in their home, and the dwarves seethed with hatred. They suggested that perhaps Gilling would like to join them on their boat. When the boat got far out in the water, they hit a rock and capsized the boat. The giant, being unable to swim, drowned. The dwarves righted the boat and rowed back singing with joy. They explained the accident to his wife, who wept and wept, and the dwarves grew tired of the puddles of tears in their home. Fjalar said to Galar, "Go get the millstone and wait above the door." And Galar did. Fjalar said to the weeping wife, "Would it help to look out to sea and see where he drowned?" The wife stood up sobbing and went to the door, where Galar dropped the stone on her head, killing her. "I was sick of her wailing," said Fjalar, and the dwarves were glad. When Gilling and his wife did not return, their son, Suttung, went in search of them. He came to the dwarves with their dismal faces and listened to their lengthy tales. He lifted them by their throats and waded out to sea until it was too deep even for the mighty Suttung. He dropped them on a rock and said, "It is too far out for you to swim now, and when the tide comes in," leaving the threat to hang. Fjalar and Galar looked at each other. "We've a suggestion," said Fjalar. "Since it has come to all this trouble," said Galar, "we are willing to offer you our greatest possession." They described the Mead of Poetry, its origins, and its powers. "We will give you this, if you give us our lives," said Galar. Suttung agreed, and took the dwarves back to their cave, where they had no choice but to give the mead to Suttung. The giant took the mead to the mountain he called home, and hewed a new chamber from the rock, and left his daughter Gunlod to guard the mead day and night. Suttung, unlike the dwarves, was boastful about the mead, and it was not long before Odin heard of it, and decided he wanted it. Odin set off, in disguise as a traveller. He came upon the giant's land and asked a farmhand who he worked for. The farmhand told him he worked for Baugi, brother of Suttung. Odin thanked the farmhand for his information by sharpening his scythe with his whetstone. The other workers crowded around hoping he would sharpen their scythes as well, and he did. Marveling at the newly keen scythe, they asked if the man would consider selling it to them. Odin said only one man would possess the stone, and with a glint in his eye he threw it high in the air. The workers ran about trying to catch the stone, all still holding their sharpened scythes. And before the stone even fell back to earth, all the workers had fallen, their throats cut by their own carelessness. Odin, pleased with his work, went to the foreman Baugi and asked for a place to stay and a meal. Baugi agreed, but complained about the deaths of his workers. Odin smiled and said, "I could do the work of all of your workers before the end of the season." The giant balked and said no man could do all the work that needed to be done. Odin smiled again and said, "You see, I am strong, and I will do it." The giant agreed and asked what wages he would want to be paid. Odin said a drink of Satang's mead. The giant scoffed and said the mead is not his to give. He could, however, get him inside of the giant's home. Odin agreed and set to work the next day. Odin was as good as his boast, and the giant was shocked. And before the end of the season, Odin asked for his wages. The giant begrudgingly agreed, and took Odin to the top of the mountain, and said this is above the room. Odin produced an auger, and told the giant to begin drilling. The giant did, and said he was done. Odin bent down and blew in the hole. Stone chips flew high in the air and out of the hole. The hole did not go all the way down. He accused the giant of cheating him and told him to keep drilling. The giant did, and soon withdrew the auger again, saying it was done. Odin blew in the hole a second time, blowing the stone chips down through the completed hole. Odin, thinking fast, turned into a snake and dove down the hole just as Baugi attempted to stab him with the auger, missing by a hair's breadth. Odin turned himself into a one-eyed but handsome giant. For guarding the mead room was Satang's daughter, Gunlaud. Upon the sight of Odin, her father's orders of guarding the mead flew from her mind, as he beguiled her with his songs and stories. For 3 days they talked and laughed, and 3 nights they slept together. The heartless Allfather Odin had made the giant's daughter drunk on passion. She would give him anything he desired. He asked for 3 draughts of the precious mead, and she took his hand and led him to the chamber. His first draught drained Odrorir, his second Bodin, and his third Son. Once Odin had all the mead in his mouth, he turned himself into an eagle and flew with haste to Asgard. The giant Satang spotted him, though, and spoke the magic word to change himself into an eagle as well. The Aesir had assembled many jars and bowls to catch the mead, and Odin in his flight spat the mead into the assembled vessels. However, in his haste, some of the mead had dropped from Odin's mouth to the earth below. This was the fool poet's portion. All who drank of it merely believed they held the wisdom of the gods. Satang shrieked and wheeled away in anger, for he had been beaten through the cunning of Odin. And so, while the gods may have lost Kvasir, through the Allfather they at least won back his blood. Odin once more drank of the mead, and sometimes offered a draught to one of the Aesir, or even a Skald of Midgard or 2. And that is the tale of the Mead of Poetry. Thank you for hearing our tale. If you enjoyed it, please take a look at our Patreon page and learn how you can earn great rewards while also supporting us. Once again, thank you for listening to our story.